Hey, welcome back, class. Christopher Davis here, English Composition 2, summer course. I just want to first talk a little bit about some housekeeping things and also to apologize for my lack of professionalism today. I'm kind of bumming being on a Thursday. I'm just kind of bumming today. I haven't even shaved. Yeah, I should get my hands slapped for this. But anyway, COVID 19, I'm going to blame it on that like everyone else. Um, so, just to clarify a few things, the course calendar, I sent an email about that this morning. I totally forgot to post that on the first day of class. I thought I had everything lined up perfectly for you guys. And then I got a question overnight from one of the students in the class who asked about due dates and whatnot. And I looked back on the blackboard and I realized I totally forgot to post that calendar right. Usually I try to keep it right next to the course syllabus so that you've got the two main things for the class right there next to one another. Um, and so if you go on Blackboard under the main course content page, of course, you'll scroll down and see the course syllabus. Immediately below it, you will see the course calendar. And I've uploaded that this morning. I also sent it to you in an email. I like to do multiple modes of communication just to make sure that everybody is on the same page and nobody gets left behind. Um, Another question I had, we do have a few new students that were added to the class late, and I wanted to ensure all of you that um, I think everybody has gotten the first reading response added and submitted, except for one. I think I got one paper that is still outstanding. So if you will, please that to me as soon as you can. The college requires that we do an attendance verification for all of our courses, and it's usually within the first couple of weeks. We want to make sure that the students who are enrolled are definitely coming, attending the class, and participating in the class, and fully engaged, aware of the assignments, and understand what the course objectives are, and are completing those course assignments as quickly and efficiently as possible. So, you know, having said all of that, I understand we're in challenging times right now. This COVID situation, even though it seems like it has eased up a little bit, we don't know what the second wave, if there's one coming, what it's going to do, what kind of impacts that's going to have on the economy and on people's professional and working lives. So I'm trying to be a little more understanding when it comes to these due dates. The summer course is more abbreviated. I think I calculated we were somewhere in like 11 or a 12-week schedule. So I've had to shorten the course, um, and the number of assignments and the readings, of course, have been reduced in order to accommodate that 11-week to 12-week cycle. Um, but a lot of these assignments are coming more rapidly. So I understand that many people out there are still, facing some challenging situations because of COVID-19, and the impacts to their economic and financial security lives and stuff. So if you're having any kind of issues, please reach out to me. Let me know what your situation is. Nothing specific. Just let me know what the impacts are to your ability to complete the assignments and keep up with the readings and stuff, and I'll work with you on it. I'm not a hard ass when it comes to deadlines. I'm not a pushover either, but I'm very reasonable when it comes to deadlines. I understand people have extenuating circumstances right now that are causing a lot of chaos and a lot of uncertainty as far as time and schedule. So, like I said, just reach out to me and let me know generally where you're at and what the impacts are, and I'll do everything I can to help you with that. Um, the other thing I wanted to bring attention to was when you look through the course schedule, um, you're going to notice that in the poetry section that's coming up in the latter part of June, early part of July, um, it's a very short window. It's like a 2 week window. Um, The poems are very, very short. There's not a lot of a deep analysis that goes into poetry, as there is with drama and with literature, fiction. So because of that, I tried to buffer in enough time to allow you to go through the readings, to understand the poems, to listen to my lectures that are forthcoming on those various poems, to give you kind of my perspective on them, and to also give you some time to work on that essay. Now, because that's a short 2 week window, I want to reassure you that if you do have some issues meeting that 2 week deadline, I am willing to, just for the poetry assignment, go at least a week after the deadline. That's not a blanket um, buffer grace period for everybody. I'm not saying that I want everybody to wait a week, but if you are having some issues and you need to let a little bit extra time, then I'll be willing to work with you on that. Just the only thing I ask you to do is to reach out to me. Uh, Give me enough of a notice and time to account for that, and then I'll help you get caught up and whatnot. So, just for the poetry essay, I'm going to put in that week grace period, just to kind of give you a little bit of a buffer. That it bleeds right into Hamlet. Um, there are not a lot of assignments while we're going to be reading Hamlet, so it's not going to be a huge impact on me if I get a lot of late papers on that poetry essay. Uh, so anyway, we'll talk about more about that when it comes up in the next few weeks. Last week I gave you a little introduction into literary analysis, and we discussed the what I consider, different professors have different way of categorizing these analytical tools, um, and the set that I've categorized are the ones that are more uh, to me offer a better analytical situation of what you're analyzing when it comes to the fiction or the poetry or the drama. Okay, so last week we started off with what I call the three major um, elements of literary analysis. The first one was uh, character, and what we look at with character is a person's motivations, a character's motivations, actions, words that are used, not only with other characters in the story, but also in times, especially in drama, you will get these moments in the scenes where a character is allowed to move over to the other side of the stage and away from the other characters in the tale. And that's what we call a soliloquy at that moment, where the character is actually speaking to time and space. It's almost like you're getting inside that person's head. Um, and so a lot of character motivations and thoughts and ideals and emotions are expressed when you have those moments where a character is allowed to get to the side and really kind of get into that character's head. Um, and when I'm looking at a piece of literature, I'm always analyzing um, when it comes to characters, whether it's the protagonist, the main quote unquote good guy of the tale versus the antagonist, quote unquote bad guy. Um, I'm listening for little hidden clues within the text. Maybe it's a certain word or a phrase or an attitude that comes out in the text when that person is speaking. The other thing I look for is the actions that are taking place. What is that character doing at that in the plot at a specific moment in time, particularly when it comes to crises and conflict? What is that character's motivation for approaching that conflict? What does he or she want to accomplish when hitting that moment of crisis? And what actions does he or she carry out in order to either resolve that conflict or even sometimes exacerbate it? It it's just little hidden clues in there. It's a lot like looking at the murder mystery genre, where you start off with the murder mystery and you're kind of getting a feel for who the characters are, and you're trying to figure out who done it, you know. And the way you do that is you really analyze, excuse me, what a person is saying, what a person is doing, and the attitudes and the words that are used while those actions are being carried out, not only personally but with other characters. Um, and a lot of times you will get a feel for what the authors, we call that characterization. You'll see that in the very bottom bullet on the first slide, slide number 2, after the title slide, under characterization is basically the way that the author unveils who the characters really are. Um, that goes back to that saying, everything isn't always as it seems. Authors really play into that and try to trick you, and it's a playful game, right? And so, but a lot of times, subliminally and subconsciously, an author will reveal certain little things about a character that they either want you to know, or they slip up and help you realize, about the character and their motivations and stuff. So that's an important thing to look at too. So I always, when it comes to character, I look at um, what the character's saying, what the character is doing at different moments in time, especially around areas of conflict, and what is the author's attitude at the time. And it's kind of subjective when it comes to reading these texts for the first time. And over the course, when we start talking about these different works, I will give you as an objective explanation for what that author intended during that moment in time as I can. And we'll exercise that when we look at Hawthorne's The Bookmark at the end of this video. The second thing that we talked about was plot. And there are many sub-elements to plot. I mean, basically a plot is a sequence of events. It's a road map, so to speak. If you're going on a trip somewhere, say if you're going down to Disney World, that plot is the beginning from your starting destination from home, point A, all the way to point B and everything in between. Okay, it's all the actions that take place in between the beginning and the ending of a tale. And as a scientific way of explaining what that is basically a sequence of events. What is happening in the tale? Where is it happening? Does that have an impact on the story? Um, Unfortunately, we're not able to look at a good example of that this semester, but last semester when I had the longer version, we looked at a story called A and P, which took place in the 1920s and 30s up in the Northeast. And one of the things I had the class do was analyze, well, having understood the events that took place um, in that story, how would it have been different had it happened today in 2020 down in a small town in the South? Would it have been any different? Would the characters have acted any differently? Between the 1930s and the 40s versus now. So when it comes to analyzing plot, those are things that you're looking at: time and place, and looking at those sequences of events that happen not only between characters that are carrying out those actions, but also the environment in which it happens, the time and place at which it happens. That has a stark effect on the overall theme of the tale. And then the other thing we talked about, of course, was conflict. Now we'll get into conflict more in depth once we get into Hamlet, because Hamlet is full of conflict. So I'm going to leave those. I apologize, the FedEx truck is coming by. I will leave the more in-depth discussion of conflict, for the drama section. But just be aware that conflict is that struggling between two opposing forces. Mainly, when we're looking at fiction, we're looking at that conflict that arises between the protagonist, which is trying to possibly do something quote unquote good, versus the antagonist, who is trying to prevent that from happening. Okay, and then again, the third one is theme, and the theme is a overall representation. It's the whole package of everything that you're analyzing with the characters and the plot. It really signifies the author's intent for writing that piece of literature. And according to the slide that I put in here for you, themes are the big ideas that authors use when they're as tools, when they're trying to set the groundwork for their work. What are they trying to accomplish with that work? What are some of the things that the human um, experiences, the typical human experiences that that author wishes to talk about? Um, some common themes, of course, are the good versus evil, the hero versus the villain kind of theme. Um, you know, analyzing why humans do things the way that they do. You know, looking at the human experience. Then you can have other subtopics under there like politics and religion and authority and coming of age and etc. You know, those are minor little motifs that are brought in there to fully give you a view of what that author is intending for that work, wrapped up into theme. So again, the two main sub elements under the we talked about with theme are allegory and applicability. Allegory, as Professor J.R.R. Tolkien, who's a professor at Oxford, stated, is that allegory is always in the authority of the author versus applicability being the authority of the reader. So, whatever that representation is being made or being inferred that is present within a work, allegory is the author's intention according to Tolkien. It's what the author intends for that story or those characters or the plot, the themes to represent something that has happened or is present within the natural world, the real world. Versus applicability is a reader's own perspective and own experiences being imprinted on that work, something that you're deriving from that work or inferring that really stands out in your mind, going, oh wow, I remember going through a situation similar to this. So this work, you know, from my own perspective means this. That's what we mean by applicability. Okay, so that's character, plot, and theme in a nutshell. All right. Oh, let me get back to my PowerPoint here. Some reason it. Okay. So, really quickly, we want to talk about irony a little bit. Irony is really, you can really analyze irony in three different types of situations. And once we get to Hamlet, you will really see irony come to the forefront. Okay, you'll see it a little bit here and there in some of these fictional pieces, but it's subtle in nature. Okay, that is present in the work. But in when we look at dramatic works like plays, one you know with Shakespeare's Hamlet, irony is used to really set the stage. No pun intended. For what is going on and what a character's intentions are at the time. Irony, as we define it in its basic definition, is the presence of some kind of discrepancy. Okay? Anytime that you're in an ironical situation, you immediately recognize it, and there's like something's not right. Either it's something that's said or something that's done. Oh, that doesn't fit, right? You ever been in a situation like that where, you know, something someone tells you, it's like, well, no, that doesn't seem right. Not so much that it's a measure of right or wrongness, but there's a discrepancy there from your own point of view. Okay, um, that's not the way I see it, or my experience has taught me something the opposite. Okay, and that's what we mean by irony. Irony is that presence of a discrepancy in a piece of text that makes you stop and you go, wait a second, this doesn't sound right. Okay. Irony comes in three different forms. One we call verbal irony. Okay. And verbal irony is when a character or a person in a story says one thing and means something completely the opposite. Okay. Uh, For this discussion, I'm going to use Romeo and Juliet because I think Romeo and Juliet is a perfect analytical piece to demonstrate how irony is present even within a piece of text. Okay, so looking at verbal irony, that's when the moment a character says something or does something, and they say one thing, but they're really meaning the opposite. Okay, and you're aware of it. Okay, an example of that from Romeo and Juliet is when he sees Juliet's dead body, and he realizes, or he thinks from his own perspective, that she's dead, even though we know, no, she's alive. She's sleeping. She appears dead, but she's not dead. Okay? So Romeo, the character in the story, thinks that she's dead. And all of a sudden, he pulls out the poison and he's willing to be with his quote unquote love, his true love. And the only way he can do that, according to his own perspective, is to die because he thinks she's dead. And so before he takes the drink of poison, Romeo looks at it and goes, "Ah, sweet medicine." Okay, that's a discrepancy. You and I both know that poison is not medicine. It does the opposite of medicine. But from Romeo's perspective, even though he recognizes that that poison is going to kill him, the result of taking that poison is going to give him what he desires most of all, which is what he thinks is to be in death with Juliet. Okay, so that's why he uses the phrase sweet poison. Okay, that's a great example of a verbal irony. You realize it, we're sure the character realizes that the thing that he or she said is ironic, is a discrepancy. The second version is called dramatic irony. Okay, and dramatic irony is kind of complex, and its use is what, as it says, it's in there to create some kind of drama. Okay, that's its whole purpose, is to create drama. And what do we mean by drama? Conflict. Okay, so as I have it defined it here, it is a relationship of contrast between a character's limited understanding of his or her situation. In other words, something is going on, they're in the middle of something, and they don't really understand exactly the ramifications of the situation or the action that he or she is about to take. Okay, and it happens at a particular moment of an unfolding action, and what the audience at the same instance understands is that the character's situation is starkly different. Okay, so the character is about to commit an action, and their perspective is one thing of reality inside the cave. At that moment, the audience who is sitting outside of the cave is seeing the same action, is going, no, 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 don't do this. Okay, so the character is unaware or is limited in their understanding, but you in the audience, you have full understanding. You know what is about to happen, and it's not good. Okay, an example of that from Romeo and Juliet is the exact moment where he takes that sweet medicine, believing that his true love, Juliet, is dead, although she's sleeping. Okay. You can't get more dramatic than that. Here's this 16, 17-year-old kid who is about to commit suicide because he can't live without the love of his life, who's 14. He thinks she's dead. She's actually sleeping. He is not aware of it, but you in the audience are. And it causes conflict, not necessarily within the story, but you as the reader, you as the audience. It creates a very uncomfortable situation. Okay, so at that moment you have a discrepancy that's bringing about this conflict between the work and the characters within the work and you in the audience, or you as the reader. Okay, and then we have the third instance, which is called situational irony. Situational irony is as it says, situational. You think of the word sitcom, which is a situational comedy. Okay, what happens in a sitcom? Well, a lot of unforeseen circumstances that characters are not aware of, the viewers are not aware of, and it just comes out of nowhere and hits everybody. Okay, that is a discrepancy of the characters are expecting something to happen, the readers and the audience is expecting that same thing to happen, and then bam, the other shoe drops, and you're like, whoa, what just happened here? Same thing with the characters in the story. Most of the time, it's very comedic in nature, but sometimes it can be quite tragic. Okay, as in the case of Romeo and Juliet again. Okay, Romeo. Here's an example of the situational irony. Romeo is pining over Rosaline, his true love, at that moment in time. You can't fault the guy; he's a teenager. Okay, everybody we come across and as a teenager, oh, that's the one. That's the one. Okay, Romeo is no different. So Romeo is down and out because he can't be with his true love Rosaline, and he attends this ball. His buddies come and say, "Hey man, come on, you need to get out and about. You need to quit worrying about this girl. She's no good for you. You know, just come on, come hang out with us. Let's go have some fun." Okay, well, I guess I will. What do you want to do? Let's go to a party, right? When your buddy is down and out, brokenhearted, you take your boy out to a party. And that's what Romeo's friends did. They took him to a party which happened to be at the house of the rival of his own parents' house. Okay? Hence the whole sonnet at the beginning. Two houses, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, where ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. Okay? This is the moment that takes place in the story where everything starts to go wrong. Okay? That's why we call it situational irony. Romeo shows up to the ball or the party with his buddies. He's walking around. He's thinking maybe Rosaline will be here. And all of a sudden he sees Juliet off in the corner. And what happens as any other teenage boy? Rosa who? Exactly. So Romeo attends this ball, this party, expecting to see Rosaline, and he ends up meeting Juliet, and he's like, "Forgot all about her, dude. This one's it. This one's the one for me." Of course, what he doesn't realize, and what Juliet doesn't realize, and what the audience really doesn't realize at the beginning, is this is going to have a tragic, tragic ending. Okay, the consequences are extremely dire, and it starts with a very innocent act of Romeo's friends trying to help him to loosen up and to get over this heartbreak. Okay, bear with me. I got another helicopter coming over. All right, so that's irony in all three stages: verbal, dramatic, and situational. Um, we do have some more minor elements, but I'm going to wait and talk about them when we get to the poetry and the drama section, because they're more applicable to um, those genres than they are of fiction. So again, all of this information that I've talked about just now is located in the PowerPoint that I've put on um, Blackboard for you. It's under the literary analysis PowerPoint, and I think I uploaded that to the fiction module. What I'll end up doing is I'll end up taking that same PowerPoint and copying them over to the uh, poetry and the dramatic, because we'll come back and look at these again. All right, so hang on just a sec. Let me switch screens. That is my literary analysis talk for today, or for this week. Now let's move on to uh, the main topic at hand, which is Nathaniel Hawthorne and the Bookmark. So we're starting with our very first piece of literature, with very first piece of fiction. Okay, how do I, Mr. Davis, Professor Davis, how do I approach reading a piece of literature for the first time? Well, the very first thing I do is I do a little background research into the person that wrote it. Okay? If you really want to fully understand any piece of text, whether it's something in literature that you're studying in college, or if you want to understand something in your professional life, if you're working on a piece of a document in a collaboration environment, and you really want to wrap your head around what is the information that's contained within this document really all about, you always do some background research, right? You want to fully understand a project from the bottom to the top before you really start to analyze it. You want to see the whole picture. Okay.